described are being experienced by them too, but in my opinion, there is a difference. Gary was in his house on his property while the defendant was crawling like a snake for nearly a half an hour, dressed in camouflage clothing, carrying a 9mm gun with an extra clip before firing 31 bullets, killing 2 fathers and severely injuring a 3rd father. I would trade places any day with the defendant's family, even if it's only to talk to Gary on the phone or see him behind bars as they have for the last 5.5 years. I often hear, Your Honor, guns don't kill people. The person behind the gun kills people. Today, one of those people awaits your decision, just as Gary's family has awaited all these years. I have never seen any remorse from the person responsible for taking my son's life. He has never shown any accountability for his actions, for the pain, the heartache, and the destruction he has done to my family. I hope he never sees freedom again to ever do this to another family. And I believe with all my heart that he would. I ask for the maximum sentence allowed, to give justice for this horrific crime and judge each of the 3 affected by this gun violence individually and give the final sentence as consecutively. I have been told we are finally going to receive justice after 5 years, 7 months, 1 week and a day. You can give justice for this crime, but nothing or no one on this earth can give justice for taking Gary away from our family. Our lives have been forever changed due to that sneak attack in the darkness of the night when one person planned to shoot 3 unarmed men when they didn't have a chance to escape. One man destroyed many families, including his own, and he needs to be held accountable for his actions. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, ma'am. Any objection to that being states number 6?
Right. I would object to page 4th paragraph of page 2 being part of the record or being considered in any manner.
State's response?
I don't have, I gave you my copy. What language are you concerned about? I think that's a statement of what she knows about the case. I don't think there's anything objection.
There's no confrontation to that type of thing. There's no evidence of the record regarding that, and it is not a perception of something that she perceived or her feelings, which is proper in the right of allocation. It's an alleged out-of-court statement of the deceased on another matter unrelated.
It is related to the event, but we're not in a confrontation situation. This is not a death penalty sentence. The court can receive the information and consider it for what it's worth. I would agree, it's hearsay. The man's dead. He can't come in and say any of the things that happened to him because he was killed. But that doesn't mean that the information can't be imparted to the court, and the court can decide how to use it.
All right, I recognize that obviously this was not a part of the evidence presented to the court. We are here for sentencing today. I will sustain the objection as to that particular statement in paragraph, the 4th paragraph down on page 2, and otherwise I will admit this as states number 6, disregarding that particular portion of that statement. State's next witness.
Ms. Deanda, Mr. is going to read Gary Embry's sister's Christina Cipollini's statement.
I'm assuming her name is on the statement,
Yes.
so it'll be made part of the record. Okay, thank you. You may proceed.
Right, this is, her name is Christina Cipollini. She's the sister. I never imagined violence would roar in on our family, destroying our world. It came to a complete stop. The comfortable, peaceful, safe life we had lived came to an abrupt stop. There are really no words to describe the feeling of going to bed at night believing everything is all right in your world, then waking up to find your world as you knew it is forever gone. This senseless, unbearable act took our personalities from my family. We will never understand the brutality that befell upon Gary Embry, my brother. This act has torn family members apart. The pain we have had to endure just trying to have the strength to even talk, trying to make it through another day. We was led to a room with a cold table where my handsome brother lay. This time when I looked at my brother, he wasn't the handsome, flawless-looking brother I grew up with. His skin was no longer soft, it was cold and full of bullet holes. 29 entry and exit holes in my beloved brother. I've tried to find words to tell you how Gary's murder has impacted my life, but there are no adequate words to describe the pain, anger, and despair that I felt from his murder. He took so much from us. It took my security and my children's innocent outlook on the world. It took my rest and peace. I have lost my faith and trust in people. I don't want to be outside if my neighbors are out. I don't want to go to friends' houses just in case they have an angry neighbor ready to snap. I have trouble finding joy in the simple pleasures of life. Being happy doesn't seem right anymore. Sometimes the feeling of despair becomes so overwhelming, so oppressive that it literally takes my breath away. I never know what sound or what sight is going to trigger in my mind a memory. And while my memories of Gary, my brother, are so sweet, with them comes the realization that he is gone. And each time that realization hits my heart, it is devastating. Gary was a loving, giving young man with a heart as big as the world. His murder took a father, son, brother, grandson, nephew, cousin, and friend who was greatly loved by many. My brother Gary and I had a relationship that will never be duplicated. Gary enjoyed life and enjoyed living life. He enjoyed his kids most of all, his family, friends, fishing, camping, concerts. Oh, how my brother loved music. Gary just started a good job at NASA that he was enjoying very much. He wanted to save money and move back home to Ohio. His life was finally starting to come together in the direction he wanted and had hoped for. Gary will never get to see his 3 kids graduate from school, get married, or see his grandchildren. All 9 of his nephews will never get to play games with him again, see him on special occasions, or have him watch them at another football game again. What the future would have held for my brother Gary is unknown. He may never have made a bigger impact on this world that he had at the time of his murder. That we will never know. But to the people who knew and loved Gary, the impact he made on our lives is immeasurable. And we cry out injustice caused by this so-called man, William Woodward. What has kept me focused since Gary's murder, my beloved brother, is the promise I made to him when I saw my brother for the last time on the hard, cold table at the funeral home. I promised my brother Gary that William Woodward would pay, and now I pass that promise on to you. It is up to the court to decide William Woodward's sentence, and although there will never be justice for Gary, we are not seeking revenge in any way. Gary can never be brought back to us. We will never awake from this nightmare. I beg of the court for Gary's sake, for us, for his family, to give William Woodward the same leniency that he gave my brother, death. Gary got the death penalty with no trial of any kind. Christina Cipollone.
Any objection to that being states number 7?
No.
Okay, thank you. Your next witness?
Tanya D'Alessandro.
Number 7. Thank you. Good afternoon, ma'am. Please raise your right hand to be sworn in. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth so help you God?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, please state your name.
Tanya Del Santos.
And I understand that you have a statement to present.
Yes, ma'am.
You may proceed.
Today I'm supposed to tell you about the loss of Roger and how it's affected my life. This is very difficult to do when literally everything in our lives have changed. Roger blessed me with a son. We named him Justin. Over the years, Roger and I grew apart, but we always shared the love of our son. Before Roger was taken from us that terrifying night, I was happy, outgoing, and loving. I was a student my last semester in the medical assistant program at BCC. I was also a Sunday school teacher for children at New Life Christian Fellowship. After experiencing such a loss and witnessing my son's pain, all that is over. I am now full of grief, anger, fear, sadness, and anxiety. I have suffered financially and my education is now in a distance. My daughter, who was 4 at the time, has been affected tremendously due to my shock and grief, causing her to have severe separation anxiety. However, to witness what our son has gone through is more painful than anyone could ever understand. At times, it feels almost unbearable. Justin's fear of people and anxiety are so extreme that he doesn't feel capable of reading his impact statement today. I can tell you as his mom that everything has changed in every possible way. Justin has been diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder. Justin's behavior is full of anxiety. He gives anyone wearing camouflage a second look, full of fear because of what he experienced at Labor Day night. He has difficulty concentrating, causing him to quit school. He has become withdrawn from his friends and family, hobbies, and anything he used to enjoy. The only thing he hangs on to is fishing, a sport that he and Roger enjoy together. He now experiences nightmares reliving that night, those sounds, the gunshots, and the screams. He is depressed and so full of anxiety he will not go anywhere alone. At the age of 23, he still lives at home, unable to move on, always in fear for his own life. Either his emotions are amplified, or as you witnessed, there was no emotion even while reliving the death of his father and lifelong friend in front of him. Justin was a teenager, only 17 when his dad was taken from us, losing his childhood. He is still afraid of loud noises and holidays such as the 4th of July, Labor Day weekend, and New Year's Eve. He has lost jobs due to loud noises, startling him back into flashbacks. Without Roger, neither Justin nor I can share Justin's milestones such as getting his driver's license, his first car, holidays, and birthdays. Justin just spent his 6th birthday last week without his father. There are too many things to list that Roger, myself, and Justin have missed out on because of that horrible night. Through all this, I am blessed to still have my son. His life was spared during the rampage. However, the loss of Roger's life can never be returned to Justin and I. The last words he will remember are those played over and over for him to be listened to instead of "I love you." The images of his father are incomprehensible. Being put to death in a very inhumane way, gauze in his nose, holding back the blood, and on life support. These last memories of his father are so traumatic that it will be with him forever. I pray today that Woodward be sentenced to the 3 life sentences consecutively. The thought of the man who pointed a gun at my son's head would be released in the same town that we live in is terrifying to us. With him in prison, we can try to get our lives back and try to get at least a new normal life, as they say. Thank you, Rob.
Thank you, ma'am. Any objection to that being states number 8? Mr. Eisenmaker?
Sherry Embry?
Just one
Sorry,
moment.
I'm still considering an objection to a portion of this. Yes, at this point in time, I would object to paragraph on page 1, the last 2 paragraphs, and portion of the first paragraph on page 2. Being considered.
What is the basis of the objection?
Basically, it's diagnosis. She's not Justin testifying toward his own diagnosis. It's someone else talking about a diagnosis which hasn't been established otherwise in the record.
State's response?
This is a mother observing her son, who she says lives with her. She's expressing what not only she's going through, but what she's observing in her son. I think is appropriate.
Actually, I think she's claiming that he lives at home.
All right, I will overrule the objection and introduce the entire statement as states number 8. State's next witness.
Sherry Embry?
All right, Sherry Embry, please. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the time.
If you would please raise your right hand to be sworn in. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I affirm.
Please state your name.
Sherry Marie Embry.
And I understand that you have a statement to present.
Yes, ma'am.
You may proceed when you're ready.
I am Sherry Embry, and today I am here to talk to you about how the murder of Gary Lee Embry has affected my life. First, I would like to say that Gary and I had the same mom and dad. Since Gary's murder, I see neither of them. Gary was not only my brother, he was my only full-blooded sibling and my dad's only male child. Gary was violently taken from us before his time. I love and miss my brother. He will always be in my heart and my soul. I haven't celebrated a holiday or had a family Christmas since the day Gary's murder. The added stress on my life has caused me to gain over 100 pounds. I don't tell anyone where I live or give out my phone number like I did when Gary was living. The death of my brother has created a trust issue within me. I used to go out and sing, write poetry for songs, and now I have a guitar case full of empty poetry that I can't bring myself to sing. I am glad I have friendly neighbors, and I pray to God that I never have neighbors like my brother had. I have been inside the house for almost 6 years and seldom leave. I only go out when I have to because I'm afraid that Mr. Woodward's family or friends might try to murder me. Mr. Woodward said I got them all, but because I am only Gary's only full-blooded sister, I feel like that his statement is a threat to me. I am still living, and he did not get them all. I have never owned a gun, but I think maybe the police and the military should work harder on not allowing people like Mr. Woodward to possess guns. Mr. Woodward said his dad loaned him the gun. I would like to know what psychologist or anyone else would let a person who has post-traumatic stress disorder near a gun, let alone have one. Because my brother was unarmed and was brutally murdered, I imagine what others go through in these situations. And I will encourage the government representatives, our education system, and our president to enact the death penalty for shootings and to create stricter gun laws. All of my life, it has been Sherry and Gary. Mr. Woodward has taken that away from me. And yet, after Gary's murder, I called the fire department to ask them not to hold the actions of Mr. Woodward against his brother. This being that Mr. Woodward took lives and his brother saved them. During the Stand Your Ground hearing, Mr. Woodward stated that his dad gave him the gun and told him, I won't always be around. Do what you have to do according to his own statement in court and in the news. I want to know what kind of parent gives this advice. What kind of parent gives their son a gun? What kind of family, besides a dysfunctional one, does this? Mr. Woodward has changed my view of the military in many ways. I have always supported our deployed troops in Iraq and Afghanistan and Korea by sending care packages to them. Some of the care packages included letters from children
from local schools at Christmas. I have never seen the United States military take someone's only male child or brother like Mr. Woodward took mine. In my opinion, your actions are a disgrace to the United States military. In the Holy Bible, Leviticus 24:17 states, "And he that killeth a man shall surely be put to death." In the event of a sentence of death, my wish is that Mr. Woodward be given the chance to repent by being baptized before he is sent to meet his Maker. In the event of a lifetime sentence, my wishes are the same. I feel that no one should have to have their soul burn in eternal fire, and everyone should have the chance to be saved. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Respis, what I was presented with wasn't exactly what she read into the record. So,
The record, I have no objection to it
Okay.
being, and whatever additions she made,
Okay.
are part of the record.
just wanted to note that.
Right.
All right, so without objection, that'll be states number 8, states number 9. State's next witness.
Judy,
These aren't.
okay. Jennifer Montgomery?
All right, Jennifer Montgomery, please step forward.
My name is Jennifer Montgomery. I am the mother of Destiny and Jean, Gary Embry's one and only daughter of the Embry side family.
Okay.
Also,
Before you proceed further, ma'am, let me ask you to please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
yes, ma'am, I do.
And please state your full name again.
Jennifer Lee Montgomery.
Okay, I didn't mean to interrupt you. You were also going to make a further statement.
Yes, when me and Gary originally started dating, I had a 2.5-year-old son, Alan Garrett Stockbridge, that Gary raised from that age on, and pretty much treated him like his own son on top of our own daughter, and as well as after in court. And he was the best father that I've ever met in my life. And they called him the daddy daycare. And I worked and he stayed at the house with the kids and all that. And to take somebody's life like that and destroy these children's lives like they have. This is a tragedy for life. My kids and these babies will be affected for the rest of their life. On top of the trauma that it's done to us adults ourselves and the parents and so on. I just don't understand how somebody human could take somebody else's life like that and to do it so violently. It's just torture and the pain that I have. I'm supposed to fix everything as a parent and I can never ever fix this. I can never ever give it back to their father. And I don't feel it's fair that this man can even see his children when my children will never ever see their father again in their life. And it's just devastating. Please, just let this man suffer for the rest of his life for life and understand what he's done to these people. It's just, I can't even talk. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Your Honor, I'm going to ask that there's 4 other letters that I'd ask be made part of the record. I don't know if some of these were received by the court or not because there were lots of letters flowing in this case. Let me, you got the other side.
Mr. Estes, the count, these two not the previously provided to me, these are the previously provided to me.
Okay, I'll let you have all four. I'll start off of them. Okay. My understanding is that the letter from Judy Vogel and Mary Haas, who are the aunts of Mr. Embry, have been received by the court. But I'm going to offer those, just so that, same way I've done the others. The other two letters are from friends.
Hold on, let's address one at a time here. All right, Mr. Eisenmenger, you've seen a letter then from Mary Haas.
Those have been previously provided to me, and the representation was they were filed with the court. I had no objection to them then or now.
Okay, so without
The
objection,
court probably has reviewed those.
well, I received many letters from
Yeah, I don't.
I
due to
understand.
notices of filing and people that just wrote letters, and so we just e-filed all of them, so they're part of the record, whether the court's going to receive them in evidence or not. So I think that, as you've indicated, Mr. Eisenmenger, there's no objection to the letter from Mary Haas.
That's correct.
All right, so that'll be states number 10. And what about the letter from Judy Vogel? Is there any objection to that, Mr. Eisenmenger?
No.
All right, that'll be states number 11.
And then there were two letters from family friends of Mr. Embry.
10,
That's Leland
11.
Chimreys and Dina Chimreys.
And you've seen those, Mr. Eisenmenger?
I had not received them until today, but I have no objection to them.
Okay, so you have no objection, and this first one is from Leland Chemreys.
Yes.
So without objection, that will be states number 12. And the second one, just presented here, is from Dina Chemreys.
Yes.
And no objection to that, so that'll be states number 13. So this is
That's all the
12.
information we intend to present at this portion of the sentence.
10, 13. May I have the attorney's approach for just a moment, please? This was just handed to me. Another letter just received. I haven't read it. I just looked to see. It appears to be in support of the state because of the first statement. As every letter that has come in, I simply have had my assistant e-file them, so I don't know if the state is seeking to introduce those or not. Those are all just copies. Those are not all.
I understand
Yes,
they're
okay.
copies of the same
So you
letter.
could each have one if
Right,
you'd like
yeah.
to review them.
Yeah,
She just made
there's people
several.
sending stuff that,
I understand.
is it one of the, are they all the
They're all the
the
same.
same,
They're all the
apparently.
same. If you each want a copy, there's plenty of copies for you.
I think we just need one.
She was trying to be helpful to give one to every attorney, I suppose. I don't know. So I don't know if the state is seeking to introduce that letter. Have not reviewed it.
And Judge, just so I'm on par, has the court read the other letters that were submitted by the defense?
The notice of filing?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, because
Yes.
I was not going to take the court's time by individually reading them into the record if the court had reviewed them. If not, I would ask the court to take a recess and review them.
I don't know who
It's from a family friend.
family friend.
I mean, like I said, people just wrote letters and then you did an official notice of filing.
I did.
So I have reviewed those.
Okay, I'd ask this to be received into the record as well.
Any objection?
No.
Okay, thank you.
She just picked up my copy.
Yeah.
That's okay. That's
You
fine.
need extras?
And Judge, I do need a brief recess. If they're finished, I have an expert who I'm going to put on. I just need to briefly speak with him, maybe 5 minutes.
You need copies.
Yeah, I gave one for the record.
You gave your
You
copies
should have
away.
just let you keep it because you've got all the copies.
Yeah, copies for everyone.
Thank you.
Okay, all right. So without objection, this additional letter from Sharon Graham will be number 14 in evidence. And state have any other witnesses or evidence to present for purposes of the sentencing?
No,
So the state would rest, other than argument?
correct.
Okay. And Mr. Eisenmenger, you're asking for a recess?
Sure.
How long would you like?
I'm in about 10 minutes.
Okay. All right, we'll take a 10-minute recess. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Let's bring out Mr. Woodward again, please. I'll note the presence of Mr. Woodward at council table with Mr. Eisenminger and Mr. Robinson, and the presence of Mr. Respis and Mr. Shiner on behalf of the state. So the state has presented their evidence and testimony, and how would the defense like to proceed?
Judge, first I'd ask the court to take into evidence the letters that we previously provided to the court and the council through notice of filing, which the court has indicated you have reviewed. I'm not going to take the court's time to have it individually read into the record since the court has read them.
Okay, there were 2 notices of filing, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
I believe 2 separate ones.
Yes, the notice of filing from April 4th, and then the supplemental notice of filing from April 10th. Does the state have any objection to the court receiving those 2 notices of filing as a composite exhibit? Okay, that'll be defense number 1.
All right. And we would call Dr. Eric Mings.
All right, Dr. Mings, please step forward to the podium. Please raise your right hand and be sworn in. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please have a seat over here on the witness stand.
Judge, I know that Dr. Mings has testified before the court on other cases. If the state's going to stipulate to his credentials, I won't place time putting it on the record.
Just give me the summary of what it's done.
Okay.
All right, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Please state your full name.
Eric Mings, M-I-N-G-S.
Thank you. You may inquire.
Thank you. Dr. Mings, could you just give us a brief history of your training and qualifications?
Sure. I'm a psychologist. I've been licensed since 1988 in the state of Florida. I was trained as a neuropsychologist initially in graduate school, and I always had an interest in forensic psychology, so I began training in that during my internship when I was at North Florida Evaluation Treatment Center while I was doing an internship at the VA. So part of my internship was at the VA, primarily treating patients with PTSD, and part of my internship was at the state hospital. I worked as the first psychologist in ORMC's Brain Injury Rehab Center for about a little over a year and a half while I established private practice. And then I have been in private practice ever since then. I do forensic psychology on a full-time basis and have for many years.
And at my request, did you interview the defendant in this case, Mr. William Woodward?
Yes, I saw him on December 20th, 2017. The request at that point in time was for issues of competency to proceed.
And have you also reviewed some medical records, police reports, things of that nature in preparation for your testimony today?
Correct. I had some of the police reports available then. I just recently, within the past 24 hours, got some additional medical records from the Veterans Administration, the jail medical records, and some hospital records from Japan when he had suffered a traumatic brain injury.
As a result of the review of those materials in your interview with Mr. Woodward, have you reached any opinions as to the, reached any opinions as to the issue of whether or not Mr. Woodward suffers from any sort of mental and or physical injury deficit that would require specialized treatment?
He has clearly documented history of 2 conditions through the VA and has apparently received treatment for many years for those conditions. He is diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder, and he is also diagnosed with what is called an organic affective disorder. What that means is a mood disorder secondary to brain injury. He has been treated with a variety of different mood stabilizing, anti-anxiety medications, and even antipsychotic medications through the VA. I had those records available. I also had records from his traumatic brain injury, which happened when he was 19 years of age and had a fall from a 4-meter high veranda. He was unconscious. He suffered a skull fracture. He subsequently developed a bacterial meningitis, and he was in total hospitalized for about 3 months as a result of that injury. So he has a traumatic brain injury. He has documented post-traumatic stress disorder, and he has documented what they call an organic affective disorder, which means a mood disorder secondary to brain injury.
And all of those injuries / disability to mental health issues, are they conditions which need specialized treatment?
Yeah, they do. They need specialized medication and counseling, and he was receiving that through the VA on an outpatient basis before this happened.
And based on the history and the records that you reviewed, do you have an opinion as to whether or not Mr. Woodward is amenable to treatment?
Well, I have every reason to believe so, and the basis of that is simply that he, by the records that I saw, he was compliant with care through the VA system. He was actively involved in treatment all the way up to the last note I had was August 21st, 2012, just before this incident happened. And then the jail medical records also indicated that he was compliant with care in the jail, so I have reason to believe that he is amenable to treatment.
And Doctor, in terms of his conditions, do you have an opinion as to whether or not those conditions could affect his ability to appreciate the criminality of his conduct and adjust his conduct to
Constraints of the law?
constraints of the law? Thank you.
Yes, I believe it could substantially impact that. The reason being that if you look at the notes from the VA, they talk about chronic problems with extreme anxiety, disinhibition of mood, that means unstable mood, feelings of aggression, and other issues similar to what apparently happened here. So I believe, looking at the records, that most of this originated from a combination of the brain injury when he was 19 years old and then the PTSD as a result of being in combat situations while in the service. He describes in the notes his feelings of anxiety, panic, anger, and similar kinds of experiences that are consistent with what apparently happened here.
And just prior to this injury, this particular incident, had he expressed through his treating physician at the VA concerns about safety for his family and how he may react in that situation?
Yes, he apparently had talked to them on several occasions. The most recent note that I had in terms of time frame of the incident was by his psychiatrist dated August 21st, 2012. And in part, the report that he gives to the psychiatrist is, I feel like I'm back in combat, high anxiety and panic, periods of inner anger. He is aggravated by neighbors' bad behavior still and discussed his coping strategies. They talked to him about that during the session, to which he responded that, well, let me find that. He indicated that he would only act violently if protecting his family from aggressive actions, is what he told the psychiatrist then. But he's talking at that point in time, just before this incident, about the anxiety, the panic, the anger problems that he's having at that point in time during the discussions with his psychiatrist.
Someone who suffers from Mr. Woodward's conditions, are they more susceptible to provocation than people who don't have those problems?
Well, I would say yes, because they're, number one, he's been in a combat situation, but number two, he's got a psychiatric condition that is dominated by unstable mood and disinhibition. That would make him more susceptible to provocation by other people because of the mental illness issues.
Do you have an opinion as to whether or not he was able to cope or properly cope with his perceived failures of law enforcement, the judicial system, etc., to deal with this issue when he complained about it, and his reaction to that?
Well, to be clear, when I talked to him, my focus was specifically on competency to proceed. So I did not go into detail about what he did or did not do in this incident, nor did I go into detail about what led up to the incident, because that was beyond the scope of what I was doing. I know that reading the discovery records that he makes those statements to officers about his frustration regarding those issues, but I did not talk to him about it directly.
Okay, well, based on your review of those materials and things like that, do you have an opinion just in terms of someone suffering from his conditions, whether or not his coping mechanisms were adequate?
Well, I believe that he was being treated because of problems with his psychiatric condition, his mental instability.
You may.
Doctor, if you could you flesh out a little bit more? You were talking about his organic brain injury. Could you explain to the court how that affects someone's impulse control and things of those nature?
Yes. You know, depending upon the nature of the injury, you can get different kinds of symptoms. What he described to me before I had all of these records available, just sort of in plain English, when I talked to him originally, was that he felt that he went from being an introverted person to being an extroverted person. And he also felt that he had much more difficulty with control of his emotions and anger. That's often found in traumatic brain injury. That's the kind of symptoms that the VA records show that he was being treated for, which is basically very high anxiety, disinhibited mood, what's called labile mood, meaning that he gets angry real easy, may become anxious real easy, and all of those other sort of things, which the VA, in their records, by their diagnosis, attributed to the brain injury. I've been a neuropsychologist all of my career, and I've seen this kind of problem in people with traumatic brain injuries many times before, and it's not a surprise to me. So he was actively being treated for the emotional manifestations of traumatic brain injury when he was late adolescent while in the service.
All right. Thank you very much. Nothing more at this time.
Cross-examination?
Yes. What leads you to believe he was in a combat situation? Let's start there.
Well, he told me that he was in Saudi Arabia, in a combat zone in Saudi Arabia. I didn't go into great detail with him. The PTSD diagnosis for me comes directly from the VA, not my own assessment.
Not debating. So you relied on what he told you about combat. Were you aware that he was not in combat?
I don't know.
Judge, I'm going to object to the question because of the state's evidence. It really depends on what you define as combat.
Well, what do
Assuming
you
he was
define
in
as
a situation
combat?
where he was subjected to bombing while in the military.
Okay, Mr. Westbus, you're going to rephrase your question?
Yeah.
Ask a different
What do
question?
you define as combat?
Well, what I said was a combat zone.
Okay.
Combat the people that I've seen with PTSD in the service, and as I said, I worked in the VA during my internship, it could range from people who are in non-direct fighting situations to people who are in direct fighting situations. Obviously, the more directly you're involved in the active combat, the more severe that usually is. But the people who are also in other facilities in a combat zone are potentially susceptible to the effects of being constantly under pressure, being bombed, and those sort of things. I didn't talk to him about the details of it.
So everybody in Saudi Arabia where a Scud could land would be potentially in the combat zone?
Well, I don't know how the military defines it. I mean, that.
Okay.
I don't know.
All right. I wanted to ask you that you would have problem recognizing and assessing problems with criminality. Is that what you said that this would cause?
No, I don't. Again, let me clarify this very clearly. I was hired to do a competency to proceed assessment, so I did not talk to him in any detail about what really did or did not happen.
Okay. Well, you talked about the records.
Correct. And the records give him, the VA records give him a diagnosis of post-traumatic stress disorder. They discuss his extremely unstable mood, his emotional volatility, his high anxiety, and they treat him with a variety of medications to manage those conditions.
So you mentioned his August 21st, the notes from August 21st. How about the notes with Dr. Reed on August 16th?
Give me just a moment. Let me see if I have that. I just received these records today, so I haven't had a chance to thoroughly review them.
This is after a report from Susan Vaughn, also on August 16th.
Is this part of the VA records?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
What page, Mr. Ismas?
23 going over into 24.
All right, let me look on those pages, see if that helps. Are you talking about the numbers at the bottom of the pages? Or what you're looking
Yeah,
at?
it had printed at Viera and it has page numbers.
Okay.
That's what I got, so.
Okay. And those are from what treatment date?
I believe August 16th, based on the records.
Okay, because the page that I have that's marked page 24 is from an entry date of February 29th, 2012.
Well, let me see if you have received this information. And let me read it and see if this is something you recognize. It's involving Susan Vaughn, deals with discussion topics, and it says the following: reports another episode with neighbors. They threatened my daughter, threatened to rape her. I was ready to go over there and kill them all with my bare hands. I'm at my wit's end. They filed an injunction against me. Patient upset, crying. This is getting out of hand and I can't afford to move. Wants to talk to Dr. Reed, wants to know if Dr. Reed can go to court with him. Denies any thoughts of harm to self. Has no firearm. Has no plan to harm neighbors. I have 911 on speed dial. Dr. Reed and everyone in Discovery has been good to me. I love every one of you. Informed messages will be relayed. Did you get that information?
Not that I know of.
Okay. How about the entry by Dr. Reed that follows that? Spoke with veteran to offer supportive therapy and allow him to ventilate anger and concern over neighbors' outrageous behaviors. He states he has dealt with this by deciding to avoid contacts with them, requested extra patrol cars and neighbor, and will have court hearing upcoming in the matter. He states he will not harm them because would end up in prison with my rights stripped and the effect on the family, and has decided to work on relocating when feasible with help of extended family who have been very supportive. He also has support of 18 fellow veterans who encourage him to feel secure and not need to take personal action. Did you receive that?
Not to my knowledge. As I said, I just got records today.
Okay. Well, you would agree that that type of information would be reflection about consequences, would it not?
Well, I never made any statement that led me to believe that he would meet the criteria for insanity or anything such as that.
No, sir, I'm not talking about insanity. You're saying what you testified earlier was about not understanding consequences of actions or limited ability to understand consequences of actions.
It was what I thought I was testifying to, and it may have been misstated or misunderstood by me, was his capacity to conform his behavior to the constraints of the law was the issue to me.
Okay. So you would agree that at least he understood the consequences.
Oh, yes, I have no doubt.
and had reflected on that at least as of August 16th.
Yes.
And this
based upon-
happened in September.
Correct. I agree with you.
All right. Now, the records that you're referring to from Japan, I think, relating to the injury,
Yes.
at that time, did they note traumatic brain injury?
Yes, he had a skull fracture.
Okay.
And he also suffered from meningitis.
Okay.
And he had let me describe it. Just a moment. He had cerebral contusion, which means bruising of the brain, which is a traumatic brain injury. He had a traumatic central spinal fluid leakage from a brain injury. He had a mass in the right orbita and the right anterior skull base. He had a fractured skull and a laceration of the forehead and meningitis.
Okay. And what did the doctor say at the end after he'd been treated with that?
He was hospitalized for 3 months. What are you looking at?
Let's see. Final diagnosis from Kisato University. Did you get that?
Yes, that's what I just read off to you.
All right. And when did they diagnose the anger problem was related to that?
That I do not know, because what I have is the VA, I have a large gap. And what I have is the VA records, which diagnose him with an organic affective disorder, which means a mood disorder secondary to a neurological condition, traumatic brain injury. So when he first got that, I don't know that answer.
Okay. So, do you have the report? I assume you're talking about Otaka, Dr. Hiromi Otaka? Is that the report you're referring to?
Are you talking about the traumatic brain injury?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Dated August 13th of 88?
Just 1 second. Yes. And then he was transferred from there to another hospital for 2 more months, apparently. So they did not discharge him into the community, they transferred him to a different hospital.
I don't have any other questions.
Can you redirect, Mr. Eisenmenger?
Yes, Doctor, just to reiterate, I don't believe you misunderstood my question. Perhaps the state misunderstood my question and your answer. I'd ask if you had an opinion as to whether or not Mr. Woodward's conditions would substantially impair his capacity to conform his behavior to the constraints of law. And
That's the question I thought I was answering.
And that's the one I asked. So could you repeat your answer so there's no confusion?
I think that given the documented condition, this is a kind, again, I'm backing up. I didn't talk to him about what really happened. I didn't discuss the events. But in terms of a person who has these problems and is being treated for these problems, it is the type of problem you would expect would affect their capacity to conform their behavior, particularly, let me explain this. If he were charged with like a shoplifting charge or something like that that had nothing to do with control of emotions, I don't think the nexus is there. I don't think the connection is there. But when you talk about a person who is involved in a crime that's the result of extreme anger and disinhibition and aggression, and he's being treated for those kinds of things documented in the medical records, then I think that the case is to be made that that would affect his capacity to conform his behavior in those circumstances.
And if you add to that someone who's subjected to emotional abuse and duress almost on a daily basis for over a month, would it be even more difficult because of the repeated nature of the abuse that he was subjected to for him to conform his behavior?
Well, again, and without specifically talking about him, yes, external stresses like that would be expected to exacerbate the problems.
Okay. Now, the state also asked you about the 1988 brain injury and the diagnosis relating that to a condition. I understand that there's a gap in terms of the records and when the diagnosis was first made, but certainly before this incident occurred, it was well documented that correlation between the brain injury and the emotional condition.
He was diagnosed and being treated for these conditions well before this incident happened.
Thank you.
Any recross?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mays. You may step down. May he be excused?
Yes, please.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.